So I want to just invite us all again to just settle into our seat and take a few deep breaths as we arrive here together. The wonderful thing about mindfulness is that wherever we are, whatever is present, whatever is true is always the way in. And I know for myself, that reminder has felt especially important, really pertinent this week. We are in a time in our Hebrew calendar, and this is aside from just the profound difficulties and challenges that we're experiencing collectively as Jews right now and in the world. We're in a time on our Hebrew calendar that is really known as probably the harshest, the most emotionally challenging time of the year. So we just began the Hebrew month of Av, which is really felt to be a time of harshness and what is known as Din, divine judgment, where God feels quite far away. And I think there's really some brilliance actually in our Hebrew calendar and the way that it makes space for us to feel the full spectrum of our emotions as human beings, including the ones that are more difficult to feel and the ones that we might be more accustomed to pushing away. This is a time to actually opening to, in a gentle way, and leaning into the reality of grief, the reality of historical and certainly present day current loss, devastation, destruction, even what our tradition refers to as inconsolable loss. That's what we're kind of building up to as we approach Tisha B'Av this Saturday night. So certainly I can say for me personally, setting aside and really holding sacred this time to acknowledge loss and this time to grieve has never felt as important as it does now, on a collective level. But we don't just dive right into grief, right? Our tradition brings a lot of wisdom, a lot of context, a lot of ways to support us in opening on that level in a way that can be spiritually and emotionally healthy and even productive. Our tradition teaches that the intention behind divine judgment or deen, that harshness, is always a greater revelation of divine compassion, ultimately. And we see that represented in the emotional arc of this month of Av, where this first part of the month, the first 15 days, is a time of harshness, of deen, of judgment. And yet the second part of the month, where we find ourselves celebrating the holiday of Tu B'Av, is a direct revelation of compassion, divine compassion. So it's as if through our grief, through acknowledging our losses and letting go, in some way we are becoming newly available for love, perhaps even for falling in love. The holiday of Tu B'Av is like a Jewish Valentine's Day. So there's something really powerful about the love that is present in this month also. And our Hasidic masters teach that we undergo this transformation from grief to love through deep listening. So deep listening is the sense gateway associated with this month of Av. And I want to share with you today, as inspiration for our practice, a metaphor for what happens when we practice deep listening that is a common theme in Hasidic spirituality, which is the concept of chakika, or engraving. So probably the most well-known image of chakika is the engraving of the law on the tablets, the luchot, right? Which are also associated with our heart. And chakika, engraving, is a metaphor for presence in absence. Presence in absence. So imagining the words of the covenant engraved on those tablets, if you can just think about in your mind's eye how the way engraving works, right? Is through the removing of something. And yet through the removing of the material, through the absence of material, through taking away the stone, the words are actually engraved in a deep and intimate way. So there's some kind of mysterious way in which absence can actually also be or be the cause of an even deeper kind of presence. And we're taught that the words of the Shema, this kind of revelation of divine unity, is meant to be engraved upon our hearts, deeply internalized. That might be through the practice of deep listening itself, or through repeating those words very, very often. There are different ways in which words or ideas, or even just the sense of love, can be engraved within our being. My teacher, Reb Elliot Ginsberg, shared a story that as Shekhinah, the immanent presence of the divine feminine presence, was preparing to go into exile with the people of Israel, and she was departing the divine throne, she said to the Holy One, "Even as I leave to be with them, I will remain engraved on your heart. I will remain engraved on your heart." And so we, in return, say to her, even as we feel your absence in this broken world, you are engraved on our hearts. Even as we feel your absence in this broken world, you are engraved on our hearts. I want to invite us just to take a moment to contemplate this kind of absence. An absence that is not a disappearance, but actually a deeper kind of presence. A presence within absence. A love that does not vanish in the face of loss or separation, but can actually become more interior, more intimate. And I'll share one more quote as we move into our practice. This is from the Hasidic master, Rabbi Avraham Yehoshua Heschel of Apt, known as Ohev Yisrael. He's actually the great-grandfather of Abraham Joshua Heschel, who was once asked how he prays so deeply, with so much kavanah. And he said, "When someone comes to me and shares their heart, it becomes engraved on my own. So when I pray not only with my own heart, but with theirs as well." And so with that, we can turn towards our practice now, inviting in a deeper contemplation on this quality of deep and profound connection through our hearts to others, to the divine. This kind of presence that is intimate and real, even in perceived absence. So just arriving again in the body, in the present moment, resting your attention on your breath. Nothing to do and nowhere to go, just being. Allowing whatever has arisen for you in response to those words just to reverberate. Nothing to fix or control. Feeling how the ground beneath you is holding you. Gently noticing your heart at the center of your body. Checking in just to feel how the heart is doing in this moment. Allowing the heart to be felt. And bringing to mind, if you'd like, someone who has shared their heart with you in some way. Maybe a prayer or a longing or a pain that they hold in their heart. Or just something very meaningful to them. Let their presence gently come into your awareness. And dwelling in that memory as if their heart in some way is engraved on yours. Just feeling the depth that is possible there in that connection. And just breathe with them. Be with them. Now, welcoming in or imagining the presence of the Shekhinah, the immanent divine, the motherly face of God, just sitting with you in the truth of this moment, in whatever is here in your heart. Perhaps reminding you that even in moments of sorrow or absence, she has never left. You are engraved on her heart. As she is engraved on yours. Just breathing into this sacred presence, this quality of engraving, presence within absence. For the last 5 minutes of our sit, we might invite our hearts to gently expand, to feel into this indelible connection that we hold to all those who are in need of love right now. Those who might be grieving in our web of connection, in our communities, in the world. And those who have suffered or are suffering exile, displacement, or loss. All those who are tender-hearted at this time. You might imagine their prayers and their stories engraved upon your heart in some way. And yours upon theirs. Creating a web of hearts interconnected in this prayer. In this presence. We'll bring our sit to a close with a few deep breaths, maybe placing a hand on the heart, just noticing what's here. In a way, as we approach Tisha B'Av, we're preparing ourselves not to turn away, but to turn towards our grief with compassion, with awareness of this profound interconnectivity that holds us together, with awareness of the presence that is always here, even in perceived absence, with awareness that the Shekhinah is with us, even in our exile. And so may we be blessed as we move from this practice to feel how deeply held we are in this web of connection, in this greater web of presence and prayer. Thank you all so much for your practice, for your hearts, for your presence today. Taking your time as you're ready, you can begin to bring your attention back here to the Zoom room. And we'll seal our practice today with an opportunity to recite the Mourner's Kaddish, which I just want to say, I find it so beautiful that this prayer never once mentions death or loss, but is uplifting and sanctifying and elevating and magnifying that which is eternal. So if you are observing a Yortzeit today or in a period of mourning, please share the name of the loved one that you're honoring in the chat. And you're welcome to rise and body your spirit with me as we recite these words, and unmute yourself.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. May the memories of all these beloveds forever be a blessing. Thank you all so much again for being here today. It's such a blessing always, and truly a gift to have this opportunity in this space to come together in spiritual practice and sacred community, in wisdom and in compassion. And I certainly feel that ever more so during these times of greater challenge. So thank you for being here. We'll transition now to an optional time of Q&A. So for anyone who needs to leave now, we send you with blessings for shalom, and hope to see you tomorrow at the same time. I'll be here all week hosting another teacher tomorrow. So hope to see you then. And for anyone who'd like to stay, this is an opportunity now. If you have anything you'd like to share, if you'd like to share any reflections or any insights that came up for you in your practice today, you can do so in the chat. And also, if you have any questions about today's teaching or practice or whatever might be on your mind or heart, you're welcome to share that in the chat as well. Just preempt your question with the word question in all caps. And so I'll do my best to see it, and then we can discuss. And I'll just ask for your patience because I'm both hosting and teaching today, so I might need to do a little bit of scrolling to catch all the questions and comments. To Rana, the name again of the rabbi that I quoted. So the story about the Shekhinah going into exile and speaking to God about being engraved on God's heart, I couldn't find the original source. I'll need to ask my teacher, who's Rabbi Elliot Ginsberg, who shared with me that story. And then the other story was about Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, the first, known as the Ohev Shalom. That's the great grandfather of the more contemporary Abraham Joshua Heschel. Yeah. Pictured roots growing, pushing through compact dirt. That's beautiful, Rebecca. We share again the Hebrew word for engraved on the heart. So the term for engraving is chakika. And in the Torah, in Devarim, I think, when we recite the Shema for the first time, it says, and these words should be upon your heart, right? And you should remember them in all these different ways. And Vihavta, and there's many ways that we're supposed to like never forget the Shema and speak about it and write it on our doorposts and have it between our eyes and speak about it when we lie down and rise up. And so our Hasidic masters then extrapolate a lot on that to with this concept of engraving, that it's not just meant to be upon your heart in like a conceptual way, but it's meant to be deeply internalized, deeply embodied. And that's where we get this metaphor of hakika, of engraving. It's supposed to, be so inside of us that it's as if it changes our physical nature. It becomes part of our being. And again, that image I think is the strongest in the Torah, just in the image of the luchot, of the tablets that the covenant is engraved upon. All right, got a lot of questions. Can you speak to the engraving and the thought of may our memories forever be a blessing? My head and heart kept going to this idea. Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. I'm not exactly sure, Lynn, where the tradition comes from to say Zichrono Livracha. It's one of the things that we say when someone is in mourning. May their memory be a blessing. But I love the idea of an engraving also being a blessing, right? And just the connection between what it is to remember and engraving, because certainly if something is engraved, it's easier to remember it, right? There's something about engraving as opposed to maybe just writing that makes something more felt, more permanent. So I think it's a beautiful just contemplation. What are the ways in which, when there's something that we really want to remember, what are the ways in which we can take it in even deeper? And I think we can really look at so much, if not all, of Jewish practice as an opportunity to remember the sanctity of life, right? And I think for me, especially in terms of remembering loved ones who have passed on, remembering loved ones who are no longer with us, this concept of engraving feels even more powerful because of the way that it is presence through absence, right? That it's the way engraving works is literally through removing part of the material. And yet it's that absencing that actually draws it in even deeper and really makes it become a part of us. So I think that that's just such a beautiful way of thinking about how loved ones who have passed on are still with us in some way, that it's actually maybe something in that absence brings them into our very being in a way that was even deeper than before. So Julie, can you speak more about the relationship between the month of Av and deep listening? Yeah, absolutely. So in our Sefer Yetzirah, one of the oldest Jewish mystical works, each month of the Hebrew calendar has a lot of different associations. And one of those associations is a sense gateway for that month. And it is known that in that month, whatever sense gateway is corresponding to it, there is extra opportunity for us to bring tikkun, repair, rectification to that dimension of our being. And so in the month of Av, the sense gateway associated with it is listening. And I was just reading this morning, actually, this wonderful book that I recommend. There's a whole series on the Hebrew calendar called the Spiral of Time series by Rav Dov Ber Pinson. So this is the book about Tammuz and Av, where he really goes into he really explicates, these qualities of the different months. And he was teaching about how in Av, as we move, the first 15 days of Av, moving through Tisha B'Av, as I said, are all about the harshness and deen and grief and loss. And yet it's going through that narrow place that brings us into Tu B'Av and the second half of the month of Av, which is all about love, and not just love. Tu B'Av is like the sweetest moment of love. It's the time of falling in love and meeting soulmates and dancing and just being in that fragrant beauty. And he writes that what carries us through that transformation, or one of the things that can carry us through the transformation from grief to love, is the practice of deep listening during this time. And of course, deep listening is probably one of the most loving things that we can offer to someone else, right? Sometimes I feel like listening is almost synonymous with love, to truly get out of our own way and not just hear what we want to hear or take in what we might project or assume about someone, but truly to take them in and have them feel received. And so that's the invitation on a spiritual level of where we can turn our attention to in our practice, both with ourselves and God, and also relationally during this month, is the practice of deep listening. And I'll just share also that so each month has a Torah verse associated with it, and the Torah verse, or one of the Torah verses associated with the month of Av, is from Devarim. It's the verse Hashkes u'Shema Yisrael Hayom, which means keep silent and Shema, listen Israel, today, Hayom. I love the interpretation that whenever we read Hayom in the Torah, it's literally talking about today, like not back then in the Torah when they heard it, but Hayom, in this moment. So keep silent and listen, Israel. And Dovber Pinson writes that keep silent and listen means to listen deeply, so deeply that you're allowing the words of the speaker to penetrate your heart, right? And there's that engraving again. It's like, what does it mean to listen so deeply that we're taking in whatever it is that we're hearing in a way that can actually like change the makeup of our being? We allow ourselves to be impacted. We allow ourselves to deeply internalize what it is that we're hearing. So those are some ideas about the practice of deep listening in this time of Av. All right. So I think we have time for a few more, and apologies in advance if I don't get to everyone's questions or comments. You said, think of a friend who might have shared heart, a longing, a sorrow. What about joy? It occurred to me that when we share our joys with friends, that too is engraved. Absolutely, Susan. Thank you so much. I think there's such a profound connection between grief and joy, right? They're not separate at all. They're both so important. And I can just say that why I felt called to uplift grief, longing, and sorrow today is just because we are in this time of Av, moving towards Tisha B'Av. And I think I know for myself, just growing up, it felt like my joy was always very welcome and very acceptable and very wonderful, but there was sometimes less space to be honest about grief and sorrow and emotions that are felt to be, quote unquote, negative or more challenging. And so it feels really powerful and really like a sacred practice to intentionally make space for the more challenging emotions. And that's just, one of the reasons why I'm so grateful again for the Hebrew calendar and this time, is the way that we can sanctify our grief and really welcome it in, rather than treating it as something that's wrong or something that needs to be fixed. And yes, absolutely joy. Right. The Hebrew word kakak is, if I recall, also the source of the word hook, one of the words used for commandment, generally referring to those commandments that are super rational. Yes. I love this, Lester. The carving away reminded me of Michelangelo's description of carving David. I just removed anything that wasn't David. So I think he's referring to an interview that was had with Michelangelo, where he was asked, how did you carve David, the famous statue? And he just said, I just removed whatever wasn't David from the stone. It's beautiful. Yeah. And yeah, Judith, just want to really affirm your comment here just about how much pain there is in the world right now on a collective level. And there always is. And it also feels overwhelming these days, just with everything that's going on in Israel and Gaza here in the United States. Yeah, I have definitely been feeling that too. And thank you for naming that. And, it's in these times that one of the contemplations that brings me the most comfort is just in continually rooting in the truth that whatever it is that we're feeling, we are never alone. We're never alone in facing the reality of that pain. And so, God willing, this practice of just contemplating that web of hearts can be a resource to continue connecting to that truth. So the name of the book is The Months of Tammuz and Av by Rav Dov Ber Pinson. Maybe Rachel can put that in the chat. And again, it's part of the Spiral of Time series. Nancy, thank you for this comment. This is beautiful. Nancy says, it feels like there has to be a limit to how much can be removed when engraving on my tender heart. Beautiful, Nancy. Beautiful. Absolutely true. And I think that's true in the art and in the craft of engraving or sculpting as well, right? It's not to say that we're supposed to just take it all out, but really to create something beautiful and something legible, right? There's really an art to it, and it's always in relationship to the materiality. What I love about these metaphors is actually how real they are. And I'm an artist, I'm a painter, and every time I make a painting, I learn so much. I feel like I learn so much about life, because the materiality of craft, of art, is also life, right? And so could be a beautiful practice for this month as well, is actually practicing some engraving. If you want to really understand that metaphor deeper, like what does it really take? What does it really feel like to engrave in a way that brings a deeper presence and a deeper beauty into something? Hmm. So I think we have time maybe just for one more question. I see this question from Pauline. Although the temple first and second gave a center and focus for Jewish practice, I would not be keen to see a rebuilt temple back in practice. Does this empty Tisha B'Av meaning? And Nancy says, perhaps what we are rebuilding is the connection with the divine. Yeah, so Pauline, I think, like everything else in our tradition, there's layers of meaning to the temple. There's the physical temples that were lost, and there's also what the temple represents metaphorically and spiritually. And I think people relate to this sense of the temple being destroyed historically, and also the kind of dream of the temple being rebuilt in some way in different ways. And I can just say for myself, what's meaningful to me is the temple as a metaphor for there being a physical place on earth where Shekhinah can dwell, meaning that the conditions are right in physicality in an earthly way for the divine presence to be felt. And so when I'm mourning the loss of the temple, I'm mourning the ways in which we have desecrated our earth, right? In which the ways in which there has been so much loss and destruction, devastation and desecration of this physical reality. And in the dream of a rebuilt temple, maybe there's a way that we can dream of that, also on that metaphorical level of what would it mean for the body to be that temple for divine presence? What would it mean for our earth to become that temple for divine presence, and to be related to in a truly sacred way, for us to tend that fire of connection with God. And yeah. So thank you all again so much for being here today, for your presence, for your practice, for your beautiful questions and reflections. And we'll be here tomorrow at the same time. Really looking forward to sitting with you all again and sending love and blessings to everyone.